Hey everyone, this is Mark Stevenson from Cold Essie and the Custom Apparel Startups Facebook group and the CAS podcast and CASwebinars.com sites. And this is kind of a supplemental to our most recent podcast, which is episode 17 on knowing your numbers, how much is a customer worth. During the podcast, which I'm going to link to and I hope you'll listen to, we talk about calculating kind of that value, that total value of a customer. I'm going to go through this quickly, and then if you want a more detailed explanation, just listen to the podcast. So the way we figure out the value of a customer, and suggest you do, is with a couple of different things. And the first one is, of course, to figure out the initial value of that customer. And the initial value is going to be how much are you going to make? And you can track this in revenues or in profits. If you track it in revenues, that's just the sales number. If you track it in profits, which is really the right way to do it, what we'd recommend is that you take a look at your overhead, make sure you're including everything in supplies, and definitely make sure that you're assigning a labor factor to it, because your time is worth money even if it's just you doing the job. So there's that initial value of the order. You pick up the phone, how many shirts do you want? This is how much it is, that's the value. Then there's the frequency of the order. So what we're trying to do is give you an idea of how much this customer is going to be worth over time. And as we say in the podcast, if you're terrible at customer service or you don't make a good product, don't bother with any of these numbers, because it's just going to be the one order. Hopefully you're better than that. And there'll be some kind of a frequency. So the initial value of the order, and let's just say that it's $600. It's a $600 order. Maybe it's $12 t-shirts, so what is that? That's 50 shirts. The frequency of the order, is this just something that they're going to do once and never do again? And in that case, the frequency would be once, and we're talking about per year. If they do something every quarter and it's 4 times a year, then put in the number 4. That's how many times a year that they're going to order. Now here's the important number, or one of the important numbers. How long is this customer going to be around? How long is it going to be your customer? Now, if you have been in business for a while, this should be a pretty good number to get. You should have an average of, okay, most of my customers stick with me over time for 18 months or maybe 3 years. If you're new to the business, or it's a new customer, a new kind of customer, you're going to want to ask some questions to try to estimate the longevity. And these are estimates, right? So the longevity, how long is a customer going to last? And what you may do is say, okay, Bob, I understand you need, 12 new shirts for your plumbing company. How often do you usually reorder the shirts? How often do you change employees? How much do they wear out? And maybe it's 4 times a year. So the frequency is 4 times a year. And the last question is this the first time you've ordered shirts? And if not, your old vendor, how long were you with them? Why did you change? And they're going to say something like, I order it from somebody new every time, so your longevity is probably going to be 0, because they're just going to pick up the phone again the next time they need an order. Or, we dealt with, Mary's embroidery business right down the street, and honestly, she's been doing our shirts for 15 years. She just retired, so I'm looking for a new vendor. So, okay, longevity, wow, now maybe it's going to be 10 years, or maybe they just were ordering shirts from the same person for 3 years. So you're going to estimate, okay, let's say 3 years. And this is Microsoft Excel, by the way, so I've got all these formulas in here. Basically, it's the initial value of the order times the frequency times the longevity. Now this customer has a potential lifetime value of $7,200. You can see how this changes your outlook, right? You're looking at just placing an order for this week, or just turning out an order for this week and selling $600 worth of stuff. And that's great. It's nothing to sneeze at. But now you're looking at your customer a little bit differently and saying, this customer has a $7,200 lifetime value. The last thing that we have here is called the R factor. And that is, it's a referral factor. Most people in this business, they make most of their money from referrals. A lot of you out there that are listening don't even have a website. Maybe you have a Facebook page, but in the end, most of your business comes from one person telling another. So we've developed kind of a scale from 0.1, from 0 to 0.5 as the R factor. how likely is this customer to recommend somebody new? You know, if it's a plumber and it's just their business shirts and they don't seem like they're big talkers on the phone, they don't seem like they have a connection to the community, then maybe the R factor is 0 and it's still a $7,200 lifetime value of the customer. Here's my total value. But what if they are somebody that is a connector? They're part of Leads Group. They're community activists. It's a church with a lot of members, and all of their members use the same, you know, they need t-shirts for their family reunions, not just for this charity work. You know, what if they're a good potential source of referrals? If you've been in business, you've got customers like that just send you tons of business. And then you've got customers that have been good and have stayed with you for a while in the longevity category, but they don't recommend anybody. So you're going to need to estimate that R factor. If you've got somebody that, they'll probably recommend somebody if I ask them, then maybe that R factor is a 0.2. And when I hit that number, you'll see the value of that additional business over the long term is going to be $1,440. So you get that? It's how much is the initial order, how many times a year do they order, how many years they're going to stay with me, and what are the odds that they're going to recommend a new customer? They're going to contribute to that word of mouth. So now you'll see that our value is $1,440. So the total value of this customer, potential value, is $8,640. That is a far cry from the initial value here, right? Now let's take a couple things. Let's take our value out, and let's say that they're never going to order or they're never going to recommend your services. Well, what if that $600 shirt order, and you can see how this works. Remember, we've got a total value of $700. What if you add $100 worth of caps to it? Now, if I type in $700, you see the magic. The longevity is still the same, the frequency is still the same, but look at how the value changes. What if there is some kind of an R factor of 0.1? Look at how the value changes. What if I add vinyl t-shirts to my business? Or what if I add rhinestones to my business and I only add another $50 to every order? $750, and you see, wow, look at that. You know, I just made a lot more money over time. So this is know your numbers. How much is a customer worth? I want you to take a look at, you know, this information that I've discussed here in the video, and then listen to the podcast and come back to this, and please think about the lifetime value and the lifetime cost of a customer, because it's going to help you predict what your business is going to look like over the next 1, 2, and 5 years, and it's going to help you determine how much you can spend, which we'll talk about in another podcast, in another video, how much it makes sense to spend to get new customers. This has been Mark Stevenson from CAS Podcast, Customer Apparel Startups Facebook group, and most of all, of course, Cold SE Inc.